So I'm talking today about from the book *The Force of Good* by Daniel Goleman and the Dalai Lama, and about healing the earth. And the Dalai Lama has said this about the earth: human use, population, and technology have reached that certain stage where Mother Earth is no longer accepting our presence with silence. She's rebelling. So understanding that unity helps to solve humanity's biggest challenges, and there's no such thing as an isolated problem. By injuring any part of the world system, we are injuring ourselves. There's no such thing, he says, as win-lose. There is only win-win or lose-lose. We've come to the place where we realize that our world is so interconnected. There was, at the World Parliament, there was a Native American who said to me the deepest and most profound statement, and maybe it's just new to me, I'd never heard it before, but he said that Mother Earth is our source, not a resource. And so I could go on and on about what is wrong with the world, the earth, what devastation and what horrendous things are coming to pass, but I don't think that that serves us at all. I took this class a long time ago, and it was an honors class, and I had to write a paper defending my entrance into the class. And so I wrote about how technology was going to be the only way that we're going to solve the issues that technology has created. We can't go back. We can't go back to a simpler time, even though we may long for it, or we may try to convince ourselves. Technology is here, and it's had its day, and the only way to heal what's happened to the earth is by using the technology in a wiser, more intelligent way. So actually my professor had to defend me because that was such a concept that the board that was sitting on could not see that was the truth. But I got in anyway. So we all know that the environment and our earth is in jeopardy. And Alex Steffen, who's a planetary futurist, tells us that North America has an environmental footprint that in a very short time will take 5 to 7 planets to accommodate. That's astonishing, isn't it? And really causes us to pause. He says that with the developing nations, a city the size of Seattle develops every 7 days. Wow. A city the size of Seattle develops every 7 days in developing nations. And so what does that mean for us? What can we do about that? How can we accommodate that kind of growth? And as I said, by talking about what's wrong is not going to solve the problem. Talking about what's right and what we can do about it will be a solution to healing the earth. And one of the things that he says, now remembering that he's a planetary futurist, is that denser cities with population less spread out will help to solve that huge footprint. Because we spread out in search of services. And when the city becomes dense, then the services suddenly become available to us. And so establishing a dense city, going up rather than expanding, and setting aside land that is safe infinitely, I don't ever know how to say that word, in perpetuity. So, and managing growth rather than just allowing it to go harem-scatter. He says that living in a denser community, suddenly we find that the things that we need are close. And since the most sustainable trip that we have is the one that you never have to make in the first place. And by condensing cities, that reduces our need to travel. And so he talks about when it comes to tailpipe emissions, that's only a small part of our automobile footprint. Of course there's emissions, but there is also the problem of disposing of cars that are no longer worthwhile. There's disposing of batteries. There's the cost of manufacturing, the cost of highways, and all of the things that we don't connect with pollution as far as cars go. So if we can reduce all of those things, then we are reducing our environmental footprint. And let's see, what else does he say? He's a really fascinating guy. So what he talks about is that what we really want is not more stuff, but we want more sort of services. And he talks about the capacity of things to perform a job. That by sharing, we can accommodate and accomplish the same thing. And he uses a drill as an example. How many of you have drills in your house? So just about everybody. So a drill usually is used between 6 to 20 hours at the very maximum. And we all go out and we buy a drill to hang up a picture, and then it sits in the drawer forever and ever and ever. Now, the drill has a capacity for thousands and thousands of hours of service, but do we use that? No. So that's just one example of the kinds of things that we can accomplish if we come to the place where we share. Excuse me. So we can start creating facilities where we can share equipment. How about step ladders? How many of you have a step ladder? I got a couple. I know. So how often do you need a step ladder? Not that often, and you certainly could share. A lot of cities now have car sharing, that you can share a car and not have to pay the cost of parking it and the real estate cost of parking it. And if you have some errands to run, you use your shared car, and then that's it, and that reduces the footprint. There are so many innovative technology possibilities that are coming up. Sustainable buildings that use their own gray water to generate electricity, their own gray water to grow plants and allow for gardens. And developing nations are finding that they do not have to go through the development stages that have historically been part of developing. They are now being able to leapfrog. And for instance, they can use cell phones now rather than laying ground lines and the expense of telephone wires and that sort of thing. They can use their cell phones for all banking purposes so that they don't need brick and mortar buildings to accomplish the same thing that so-called developing nations need. And wastewater, water, if in a country where water is an issue, there's so many new innovative ways of gaining access to clean water. Women used to have to carry water on their heads and had to travel miles and miles and miles twice a day to get fresh water. Now they have these cute little like wagons that are big drums that their kids can just pull behind them rather than having to carry on their head. And that frees women up to do more productive things than carry water. They have wonderful generators that are merry-go-rounds for kids, so kids can use a merry-go-round and pump water up out of the ground. How cool is that? Go out there and play and get on the merry-go-round and pump up water. And then there's some really amazing plants that have come into being. And the most amazing, I think, are plants that can detect landmines. And in some countries, landmines are really, really, really dangerous. So these plants have white flowers, and their roots can go down and interact with the chemicals in a landmine, and the flowers turn red. So where the flowers are red, you know not to step. And how many people has that saved, that simple, amazing little capacity? I wanted to share this quote by Paul Hawkins, who's an environmentalist, and he said this: "By stealing the future, selling it in the present, and calling it GDP, gross domestic products, we have stolen the future from our children, and there are not too many futures left for us to steal." So Gandhi said, what you do may seem insignificant, but do it anyway. And in the closing remarks of the World Parliament of Religion, the lovely man who was the president of the Board of Trustees, whose name is, I'm going to try it, Imam Abdul Malik Mahid. And he is a really good friend of the Dalai Lama's. And he had this suggestion to offer to us that seems like Gandhi's comment. What we do may seem insignificant, but do it anyway. And so the Imam said, consume less, waste less, and share more. And we can all do that. How much time on any given weekend, on any given day, do we spend thinking about consuming? Thinking about the things that we need to go to the store to pick up, the things that we need to make our lives run more smoothly, the things that we need. And in truth and fact, we need very little. We need food, we need water, and shelter is even a luxury for us, as we know. So consuming less, wasting less. How many of us clean out our refrigerators once a week before we go to the grocery store to consume more and throw stuff out? I know that living alone, that happens to me a lot. There was a Facebook ad about a little piece of paper that some woman has invented that has chemicals, or not chemicals, but spices on it that her grandmother in East India introduced her to. And so this little tissue paper is supposed to help keep food fresh longer, and it doesn't need to be refrigerated. There are small steps that we can take to waste less. And then the whole idea of sharing. There's, as I said, the Sufis were wonderful about sharing their graciousness and their food. But there's so many opportunities in our own culture and just in this community, like when Denise and other people bring their produce to share. We can all think of small little ways to do that. I want to just share with you H.G. Wells's little statement that I think is so powerful. He says, "I think that better things are on the way. I think, in fact, all of the past is just the beginning of a beginning. All that human minds has accomplished is but the dream before the awakening." Let me read that again. I think that's so rich. I think that better things are on the way. I think that, in fact, all of the past is but the beginning of a beginning. All that the human mind has accomplished is but the dream before the awakening. So if we each one take to heart the Imam's suggestion of wasting less, consuming less, and sharing more, that we can really, truly affect the way the environment is going to unfold. This one more little thing. There were 4 young Nigerian women who created an apparatus that took 6 ounces of urine and turned it into 6 hours of power. I know teenage Nigerian girls that figured that out. So I'm dazzled by the creativity of that, and I'm heartened by the future of it, because we are so interdependent. And what 4 Nigerian girls have been able to work out is certainly an impact, potential impact for all of us. So I just want to remind you of the Native Americans' remark that says, Mother Earth is our source, not a resource. And being able to make decisions that are humanly based rather than compromising and making our gross national product, our gross domestic product, more important than each other and all of the world. So I love you all. I just hope that you put October, November of 2017 on your calendar, and we'll all go see what the rest of the world is up to. I'm so glad to be back to you. I love you all so much. Namaste. So I would invite the practitioners to stand and join with me as we hold this community in love and consciousness. I permit myself to be aware that God is everywhere present. It is God that I call Mother Earth, Gaia. I know that from the beginning, there were no borders, there were no countries, there was the earth in all of its beauty and all of its perfection. And I call to each one of us the recollection of that. I call to each one of us to step up and admire and appreciate and protect Mother Earth, the environment. I call to each one of us to do those little insignificant things that have a tendency to mount up, to become more than little things. I know that each of us is a steward of the divine. Each of us is God expressing, and we each have a role as the expression of God, and we each have a role in the protection of that we call Mother Earth, our source. So for today, I make a conscious decision to reduce my personal footprint, to be responsible as a consumer, as a citizen of the world, as a citizen of the cosmos. I give thanks for all of the good that technology brings to us, because it is God's ideas flowing through us, flowing through all inventions, knowing that good and only good can come through us and touch the entire world. So in this moment, I commit to do my part. And I give thanks for the strength and the beauty and the protection and the glory of all of nature, because that is God expressing. It is the purest form of spirit. So I claim peace and harmony and appreciation for all that is what I call nature, because it is all that. There's nothing that is out of nature. And I know it is good, and I know it is beautiful. And I invite you to know that with me on the deepest, most visceral level by joining with me, by saying, and so